much of the sidewalk salt is actually derived from the fracking industry.
Mhm,
And because it's been down deep in the ground, evidently it's fairly heavily contaminated with radium.
mhm.
Hey, I'm Dr. Ruth Roberts, the original holistic pet health coach. And with me today is Kat Johnston, who has as many initials behind her name as I do. And she can also add holistic pet health coach. For those of you that have not met Kat, she is a licensed veterinary technician and semi retired canine obedience instructor. And she has an incredibly diverse background in animal care and education. She graduated from Michigan State University with a degree in zoology and began her career in veterinary medicine in 2006 as a kennel assistant and a small animal practice. So,
Mhm,
literally from the ground up or
mhm.
from the poop up or
Right.
something. And throughout her career, Kat's had extensive experience working with animals. But after having her third child, she transitioned from working in a clinical setting to becoming an instructor at the local community college in
Mhm.
Texas, which is awesome because I think that's how you really pay it forward.
Right.
So she is there teaching in the veterinary assistant program, focusing on veterinary nutrition and pharmacology. Recently, Kat's noticed the growing impact and need for holistic health in her area. And this is what brought you into the holistic pet health coaching program. Kat, welcome. What you are doing is amazing. We were chatting a little bit earlier on what you do to get the bills paid and then
Mm.
watching and scratching your head. So,
Yeah.
out of curiosity, as you're when you're teaching nutrition in the vet tech program, is it kind of standard issue bag of food stuff or
So that's a great question. Luckily, my boss has let me take the reins on a lot of the curriculum that I've used. I do start off with the basics and basic nutrients and things like that, but I'm allowed to navigate through the tricky marketing, the tricky ingredients, and things like that. So it's allowed me to open up the minds of a lot of the veterinary assistant students out there to let them know that it may not be as it seems and that there are alternatives now. So that's been a gift for me and for all the students that have gone through the program, that's for sure.
that's awesome. So they're actually coming out of the program with their eyes at least a little bit more open than
Exactly.
that's
And you'd be
amazing.
surprised actually because a lot of them are already attuned to some of the things going on. Luckily for me in the assistant program, a lot of the students that are coming back into the veterinary world are a little bit older. No offense to the younger generation, but the older generation has like a little bit more of the awareness going on. And so that's nice. They actually know what's going on out there and they tell me something. I think it was a couple years ago that one of them told me that Mars took over one of the big veterinary clinics and I had no idea. So it was like, oh my goodness, this is just well, eye opening. And so it's been a wonderful treat to have I do have a diverse age group, but for most part, it's a lot of older students, so that's nice.
That's really interesting. And so
Mhm.
are they coming into the program because they want to work in a clinical setting?
Most of them, yes. I do have a couple that would rather do shelter settings, or I had one that wanted to start her own grooming business, but most of them were just they wanted to go back to clinical and because they were sick of their jobs. They were sick of their 9 to 5s.
Wow.
Yeah,
So they were pivoting from some other career into veterinary medicine. That's really cool.
exactly. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. And hopefully they'll keep doing the education there for pet parents because they've
Right.
got that view that maybe it isn't quite all that it seems, which is
Right.
super cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know the folks over at Feed Real, but Kay Stewart is also an LVT and actually was an educator in the vet tech
Cool.
programs. And she's been really successful in getting some of the vet tech programs to let them come in and do some education on raw feeding, which is amazing.
Ooh.
So
Yeah, I
that
can
would
talk to my
be we'll have
supervisor. That would be great.
I will connect you guys, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's I think their Kay is on a mission to spread the word about fresh feeding, which is amazing stuff. She and Ruby are doing great stuff. But
Awesome.
okay, so that was a very I took you down the garden path right from the rip, but we're actually here to talk about winter, and winter is
Mhm.
actually arriving. So What do you think are the biggest issues that pets face as that temperature shift starts to happen?
There's a lot of there's a lot of different elements. So here in Central Texas, we're not going to get cold probably until next week, but we still get that blast, and we've even got snow a couple of times since moved here. And I did grow up in the Midwest, so I'm very familiar with the very winter type temperatures. So that's for sure. But mostly, we have these little guys, both cats and little dogs, and things that do lose their heat very easily. And so that's one of the things that they have to face. We also have a lot of the animals who have joint issues. That's going to flare up in the cold weather. We have a lot of things like that come into play. I think Marquita talked last week about poisons and things like that, but things like chocolate and the salt on their feet is another thing. And so they have a lot of these elements coming at them, just in addition to the cold in general, that we have to be aware of and make sure that our pet parents are all very familiar with how to keep them safe during this time.
Right on. Yeah, Hayo's already got her sweater on because it got
Yeah,
chilly
I
here.
see.
And I'm glad you mentioned the salt because the interesting thing about that stuff is that much of the sidewalk salt is actually derived from the fracking industry.
Mhm,
And because it's been down deep in the ground, evidently it's fairly heavily contaminated with radium.
mhm.
More fun things to worry about.
Right,
So
right,
get those winter booties out there or have a way to wash your dog's feet as they come back in once that
right.
salt hits the sidewalks.
That's the
And
thing, like, if they're coming in and their feet are bothersome, what's the first thing they're gonna do? They're gonna go lick their feet, right? So, yeah,
right,
we definitely don't want them to do anything like that to harm, themselves, so that is a very good idea. Make sure you're washing their feet right when they come in, or if you have booties to put on them when they go outside, that's another great idea to make sure they're not making that direct contact with that salt, for sure.
right on. So what's some other ways to head off some of those problems at the pass? So we've got achy pets, chilly pets.
I guess, we can start with maybe the least popular, or not least popular, least common, I should say, pets were the ones that are outside. So if they're outside more than they're inside type of thing, make sure that they have a really good shelter, making sure that they have some sort of warmth, like blankets. So I do have some outside because I live on a farm or like a homestead type thing. I do have some outdoor only pets as well, but I have it's a water heater type thing that you can put in the water to make sure that it doesn't completely freeze over. And I have those for our livestock as well to make sure that they have fresh water all the time as well. So those are some good things to invest in if you have those outdoor guys, but also get creative. There's a lot of ways to make some really cool shelters. I've seen people use, like, of course, like old boxes or milk crates or things like that, but you can also use like hammocks and things just to make sure they're not making direct contact with the ground so much, and just to give them a way out of the cold as best as you can. There's little cat shelters. I think I saw one on Pinterest that you can make that really easily out of one of those plastic boxes from like the dollar store. So it's really easy just to make sure that they get some way out of the cold. And so we want to make sure that it doesn't get too uncomfortable for them, and that's one of the ways to start with the outdoor only animals. Now, the indoor ones, sometimes they even get cold just when they're inside. Some people don't put their temperatures way up. Like, I think I lived with my brother and his temperature was still at 67, and it was always cold in Michigan, which was freezing. So can't get around that. It was so cold all the time to me. But I would say that you can always offer, like Hyle has there, the sweaters or booties on if they want that inside as well. But of course, also make sure that they have nice, comfy beds or blankets to lay on. Big quilts are nice too. If they have a way to get to nice heating source, but not direct heat, of course. And then making sure that they are staying comfortable that way as well. So I think those are all really great ways. Oh, and also because they're going outside to the bathroom, because they usually do it, a couple times a day, make sure that you can shovel the areas out of snow if you can. So we have those picky animals that don't like to go in the snow. So if you're able to go ahead and shovel that snow out of the way, or get the ice out of the way if possible safely, and then make sure that they have an access to go outside. So those would be some of the ways to make sure that they're staying a little warmer at least.
Right on. And for most people, she starts to shiver when she's cold.
Mhm.
But do most dogs shiver, do you think? Or do
So
they or
they
they just
can.
hunker down and look miserable?
Exactly. So they can. They do show a lot of different symptoms of when they're cold. They might be have like shallow breathing if they're really on that comfortable spot, or they can do like really rapid breathing too, depending on how cold they are. Their pupils can dilate. They can start whimpering. They might be their fur might be standing up. You can see, and they're not scared, obviously. So they might be just cold, tucked in a ball, like we talked about. They might be just hunkered down. They might, if they're outside and they're taking for a walk, their paws will be, they might lift their paws up because it's too cold for them. And then, of course, sometimes they do start to show some of the respiratory symptoms like we do. So they might have a little runny nose, or they might start a little coughing. Their eyes might tear up if it gets a little cold. So you have to take everything into context and make sure that you are making sure you take all the symptoms into consideration to see exactly what's going on, because they may not just shiver. So we have to make sure we
Right
look
on.
at all of them. Yeah.
And that's it. Sometimes we're not very good at interpreting what they're trying to tell us. Right on.
Right.
Do you So some of those, like, heated pads are not so great, but there's
Mhm.
others that don't really heat up until the dog lays on them. Have you used those before? I think Elaine's asking a great one.
Oh, okay. So that's
Yeah,
great. I think that I'm really cautious about using anything electric with my animals, especially when I'm not there. So I really try to make sure that they're the most comfortable in a way without having to use electric as much. But if you're going to, I always make sure that they don't have direct heat. If you're using the heated pad, make sure there's some sort of layer in between. If you have even just a bed sheet, if your dog really gets cold fast or something like that, then yes, you would want to make sure that they have something thin like a bed sheet, but just make sure it's not direct heat. We don't even do that in the vet field. If we have to give them a warm pack, it's never direct heat. So we make sure, even if it seems like, oh, this isn't too hot, we never do that anyway. So we want to make sure that it's the same at home as much as possible.
because, man, I've seen, and I'm sure you have too,
Mhm.
just disastrous burns from good intentions that went
Right.
really bad.
Yeah.
And Elaine, actually, I was talking to Marco Cadonset about adding some sort of a heating element to
Hmm.
the next iteration of the PEMF pad, so that would be cool.
Ooh, that's
Um,
nice.
yeah, it would be. I'll feel, especially for those cold joints
Right.
that are achy. I think that would be super awesome. Yeah,
Yes, that would be great.
that was Hayo's vote.
And then,
So,
yeah, like the warm water warmer that I use for my outdoor, it's not hot. It's just keeps it cool. So it's not one of those
so
where it
it
like
doesn't
heats. Yeah.
heats it. Yeah, just
Yeah.
so it's stopped. Because man, that's miserable too. Going out
Yeah.
and busting ice buckets. Basic.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That
it's one
Mary
of those.
Jo's least favorite thing about winter.
I haven't
My
heard of the
my
ones that
wife.
turn on only when they lay on it, so that's interesting. I should actually look into that. My
Those
dogs are big though, so I don't know if they care that much. They'll go wherever they want type
I think
thing.
it. Yeah, it was more developed for cats, and which makes sense.
Yep.
So So do these guys end up getting colds like we do in the winter? Do they have more colds and respiratory issues, that kind of stuff, or not such a big deal?
So they do, and I'm actually starting to see it more at one of the jobs that I work at, where a lot of people are asking questions about respiratory issues. Cats are notorious for having URI, upper respiratory infections in general, but dogs and cats can actually have an uptick in respiratory issues in the wintertime. Most of it has a lot to do with them not being able to go out in the sun, getting their vitamin D and things like that. And then we also tend to not give them as much exercise, which is really important for their immune system as well. And so we have to make sure that we are looking for those symptoms as well. Drippy noses, coughing, we have any like eye discharge, nose discharge, just in general. And that can be both cats and dogs. You can keep things around like humidifier if you need to, or give them like a good steam bath for things like that. I like to make sure that they have some sort of access to be able to drain some of that a little bit, in addition to some of the supplements as well that we can talk about as well. But and then I also teach if they're starting that nasty cough, which sounds like a little wet cough, I teach people how to do, if they have a nebulizer, they can use a nebulizer and then do coupage like we normally do in the vet system, which a lot of people don't know to do after you've nebulized so much. So it breaks up that mucus in the lungs. I teach people how to do that as well so that we can keep that respiratory symptoms at bay a little bit and hopefully shorten the life of the disease. So hopefully,
Yeah, right on.
yeah,
And that's a great technique too and super simple. And yeah,
I
so it,
really
it
like it.
definitely speeds things up. Right on. And so then in terms of, okay, my dog's got a little
Mhm.
cough or the neighbor's dog has a cough,
Mm,
what are some things you might suggest for people to help the immune system help the dog get rid of the whatever's going on?
good questions. There's a lot of good supplements out there, of course, but the first things that we want to talk about are immune support just in general. So we want to make sure that you are getting a lot of the stuff that's going through your GI tract as well. So we want to get your biomes in check. We want to make sure that we have access to things like your enteric support as well, which is these are some of these are standard process makes them as well. So they make the enteric support or dermal support even for those who start developing things like dandruff during the winter. It's going through their skin as well. And then, of course, you can use things like, sorry, Megaspore, right? So you want to make sure that they're
That's
getting
a
your, yeah, exactly. So that they're getting their biome, their gut biome prepared so that they can make sure that they are able to fight off any of those diseases. And then, of course, with respiratory, it a lot of the times they have to fight it off themselves, but we don't want it to get to something more serious, pneumonia or something like that. So we have to make sure we're staying on top of it, making sure they're also eating the right foods, which is very important, and making sure that they have a lot of the right types of food as well. So making, I would say, try the warmer foods if they don't have some sensitivities to them. Things like your squash, green beans, carrots, even turnips, sweet potatoes. Those are all great. Potatoes, and then of course your proteins would be like chicken and beef, and you could do like herring or mackerel, things like that that are going to keep the body a little bit warm as long as that's okay for their sensitivities, as long as they don't have sensitivities to that or allergies to that as well, which is a little tough in my house. I've got two dogs that are on two different diets right now. So I'm trying to make sure that I can give them the best I can.
that gets really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fine. They love it. They love their food. And so it's great, but getting in the habit of doing that as well. And then
Yeah.
also one more thing about keeping the anti-inflammatory things as well. You can do things like turmeric, and then those are all great for keeping the immune system a little bit up too. There's a lot of immune support that's great for animals that you can keep them going throughout the winter if they need.
Right on. And do you like using medicinal mushrooms?
I do. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention those are fantastic. Medicinal mushrooms are a staple in my house here for my animals. Of course, my dogs are younger, so they luckily don't suffer from a lot of the things, and I've started them early on the crock pet diet. The suffering for them is more allergy related and fleas and things like that, which is tasking, but they've been doing great and we've been consistent, and the medicinal mushrooms are fantastic for that as well. So we love that around here too.
Right on. And I think there's a several great brands to work with,
Mhm.
like nice sort of uh, basic immune support profile would be like Five Defenders from Real Mushrooms or Vitality from Micah Dog. Do you have a favorite?
I personally use Vitality. I haven't tried any other ones yet, so I can't speak for another brand, but I do definitely like the Vitality Mike Dog. That is my favorite. It's been a godsend for them, my animals. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's easy too with the glycerin. So it's what works. I've been using cordyceps for Hio, the powder, and that's been a real boost for her in terms of supporting her joint discomfort. It's really made a
Mhm.
big difference. Cool. Started talking earlier about watching out for their feet on salt and ice
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff. So what are some things people can do to help prevent those feet from getting all chapped and
Yes, good question. So we do have a lot of different products that you can try while you're outside so they can wear those booties that we talked about. There's a couple of favorites that I have that are completely covering the bottom as well to make sure that they don't make the contact directly with the snow and ice and things and salt, of course. But also, I would say the cracked paws, I really the CBD salve. I believe it's called Nourish. That's a good one for like
Nourish.
cracked
Yep,
paws.
that's a
Yeah,
great one.
I
Hmm.
really like that one. I luckily haven't had to use it for my own pets, but my parents did ask me for their dog which ones would be great because salt is, I don't know how in Michigan, they are from Michigan, is like their second driveway. I don't know how to describe it, but it's always used up there, unfortunately. And they do it everywhere. It's nice to have the salt there to not have the snow, but then you have the other element, like we talked about with the salt. So that's not great. And so
Yeah,
I really
exactly.
like, yeah, I like the CBD salve, the Nourish for that one particularly. And then you can also, I've also had people use just regular calendula salve for that as well to keep it at bay. And then if they're painful, if they're already cracked, you can do a little Epsom salt bath with them really quickly when they come back in, or you can do like a rinse off some really mild soap before they come inside as well. Make sure they're not licking it right when they get in there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, and Audrey, how do you keep their booties on?
Oh,
Um, wow, that's
so
cool.
okay. Yeah, wow, that is really that's sad. I'm sorry to hear that. The booties. Okay, so a lot of the tricks that vets use, we have to like double wrap everything, unfortunately. So you can use something called it's called like a we call it vet wrap. I'm not sure what it's called in human world. But
Coflex.
yeah, Coflex or something like that. You can double wrap like the top of it or the bottom and just keep going and it sticks to itself. So that might help it as well. I've had people use like plastic baggies over it as well. And oh no, they're not able to walk. I'm so sorry to
So they're
see that.
immobilized.
Oh, I see what you mean. They freeze like that. Oh yeah. I was thinking like the booties freeze. Oh my goodness. Okay. So
Yeah, I was too.
okay, I get it. Okay, yeah, they tend to not really enjoy it as much. So I like to use a lot of this is where my behavioral knowledge comes into play. I like to use a lot of positive reinforcement. So I'll put it on inside, just start with one booty at a time, give them a treat, and then try to give them a treat a couple times, make them walk inside the house a few times. And then you start adding four of them, and you can lure them a little bit with treats and see if they'll walk with you that way inside. And that way you can use positive reinforcement to make sure that they keep them on. So I'm sorry to hear that. I have heard that, especially with cats, though. They're the ones that are usually a lot more funny about things on their feet. But
Yeah,
I could totally see that happening too.
it was when we started training our cat Pepe with a harness,
Mm,
it immobilized him to start with, which was awesome while
yeah.
we were feeding everybody else because finally he wasn't trying to run off with everybody's food, but then he figured it out and he was like, "Oh, okay, this is not an issue."
Yeah.
But yeah. And Kari's asking, have you used Musher Secret? Have you used I know that's really popular for sore feet or preventing sore feet and cracks.
So I like the ideas of waxes for prevention. If you're going to put on something, if the booties don't work, eventually you might just have to give it up. But this would be for short term, like short term walks and things like that. I wouldn't recommend it as an alternative to a booty, if you will, because for like longer walks and things like that. But you could use it for a short term period, just walking outside to take them to the bathroom, making sure that they're not getting the salt and things stuck in their little cracks of their feet and things. But yes, I do those. I don't have a particular brand that I've used, like I said, with my animals. They've been uh pretty good about the snow and stuff, as far as I can tell. So we don't really go out there just like out and come back in. Nice here. We're lucky that way, but
Right on. Yeah, you moved out of the,
I did it
brutal
on purpose.
winters.
Yes, I did for sure.
Totally get it, totally get it. I think we've covered a lot of things that most people would be worried about, but are there and I'm glad you talked about pets outdoors because I think that's not as common, but certainly it does we do still have a number of folks that, like
Mhm,
you, have farm or homestead situation, that's just part of the life, so I'm glad
mhm.
that you were able to bring up some of that. Um, yeah. And Velcro straps on the booties, that's exactly it. It's
Yes.
like wrap
Yep.
them in.
Unfortunately.
Cool. So when you how did you end up coming into the program? Because you've been doing all sorts of stuff in the veterinary field. So if you could talk a little bit about that, what attracted you into the coaching program, that'd be amazing.
So when I first saw the, I think it was just an ad on Instagram or something like that, I was like, oh, there's got to be like a million of us technicians that are looking at this type of thing. And I was surprised when I listened to one of your first talks that you had said that there really aren't a lot of veterinary people in this world, and or in this program, I should say. And I was like, why not? Because we're all discovering now that there are alternative ways to this medicine, but I often forget this because I'm not in the practices right now. I'm not in a hospital teaching. I'm doing kind of my own little thing. So I do forget that. However, I have been looking for something like this for a long time because I try to practice as much holistic in for my kids. Now, I will say I was completely jaded. Like I didn't really care too much about holistic. I thought that the things that we learned in our continuing education classes and things, that was it. That's what we know. There's no other ways. And then of course we get all of this backlash for things like the raw diets and the everything, mostly food stuff, right? Grain free, the raw diets, all of the things that have had such backlash in the veterinary field. And even my students get this confused look on their face when I say something like, what do you know about raw diets? What makes it bad? Or things like that. And a lot of them just say, oh, there's a risk of all the same things that they say, salmonella and all of that. And they just don't know, they don't have a lot of the knowledge. And same with even home cooked diet. The backlash that they're getting in their veterinary hospitals are that, oh, they're not balanced and there's no way to make sure that. And I said, wait a minute, there's programs out there now that help you with that. So it's really
There's
kind
Animal
of
Diet Formulator. It's really awesome.
exactly. And there's
Yeah,
even like websites in Just Food for Dogs, I believe, does it, right? They do the one that too. Like, but it's just there's available things where right now where you can see if it's balanced. But I think veterinarians are like, we shouldn't give them that option because then they're gonna do their own thing. And it's that's really not a great approach to it. But I am one where I have tried a lot of alternative stuff on my own pets without even thinking about it twice in the last couple of years. But I will say since I was in the vet field, I didn't really get that the outside point of views, the alternative medicines, the things like that. It was all like whatever you learned from the representative that came from that pharmaceutical company or from that food company. And that's all you knew. You knew this was a miracle drug or a really great prescription diet or whatever. You just, that's all you knew. It was whatever they told you. So it was not really encouraged to do a lot of the outside stuff. And I started thinking, well,
yeah,
maybe there's more to it than that. So when I saw this, I was like, I do know that diet is very important. Keeping your gut aligned with your body is super important. And so I was thinking, wow, crock pet sounds amazing. It sounds pretty easy to do. It'd be a lot easier if I didn't have to do two different ones, but it's still easy to do and something that I can keep my pets from visiting the veterinary hospitals as much as possible because it's keeping them nice and healthy from the inside out. So it's really nice. Yeah. And then when I
yeah.
saw the original ad, I was like, let's check this out. And I think the first time I was a little hesitant only because I didn't know like how much tasking it was going to be. I'm already working 3 jobs and things. But then I was like, oh, this you can go at your own pace. And I was so into it that I finished, on time and everything. And I was learning so much, able to apply it and starting my own business now. So it's fantastic. So
That's awesome.
I just wish,
Yeah, and it's please.
oh no, I was just going to say, I just wish that there were more people in the vet world that were doing this. I was surprised to see that they weren't. I was like, why are you not? We're all learning.
It's well, and I think that's it. I think that veterinarians and veterinary staff are under so much stress right now that they don't even have time to think their way through things, and
Mhm.
then to have to face thinking about an alternative way to approach a problem, their response is just an automatic shutdown because they
Yeah.
don't have the brain space to be able to look at another path. And it's tough. And Canine Fitness Works, I'm not sure who you are, but how long did it take you to go through the program, Kat?
I think it was total 5 months from start to
Yeah,
finish. It sounds about
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
It was not
that's it.
I was on task. I wouldn't say I was ahead, which I planned on being because that's just me. Like I like to finish things earlier. But then it doesn't go as planned. But for me, that's actually really good to finish pretty much on task and easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is fairly intensive. The course is actually
Mhm.
approved for 40 CE credits for
Yep.
veterinarians and veterinary technicians. So that was awesome. So you got 2 years of CE credits, which was
That's right.
cool. But that's it. It's not. We were just talking about this the other day. There's a bunch of like $97 courses
Mm.
for that have very similar messaging, and I bought a couple of them just to see
Mhm.
what it is, and it's like, ah, cool, Jennifer Holmes, that's cool. Nice to meet you. But what's in there is basically 120 AI generated PDFs, and it's like, "Oh, God, y'all, really?"
Yeah.
So that's it. That's what we pride ourselves on is the community. You've got your fellow coaches, Melissa, Audrey, Kayla, one of our students is on, Karen Druckenmiller, and Melissa Nathanson. It's an
Yeah.
incredibly supportive community, and we show up to support everybody as they're launching into new and scary endeavors.
Right.
Yeah, and that's been,
Yeah.
I think, just so much fun for me. Yeah, so it's a very interesting road for sure, but I think
Mhm.
that as we find more people coming in from the profession, then it becomes a little bit easier to start to talk to others within the profession and both veterinarians and veterinary technicians to help them understand that no, it's just this is not just crazy woo stuff, and
Mm.
really it does help. And if you're out of options, what do you have to lose?
Right.
So for those of you that are not familiar with holistic pet health coaches, the whole goal for this is to create a group of people that can offer you, the pet parent, options for supporting your pet holistically. They're not here to do the veterinarian's job of diagnosing, treating, and prescribing, figuring out what's wrong, but helping you, the pet parent, figure out how to optimally support your pet and not use so much of the pharmaceuticals and not use the prescription bags of food that often end up creating other problems that then you have to treat to support those. So this is our goal, is to empower you, the pet parent, with
Yes.
more things in your arsenal. And we all always start with food, because if you're feeding Doritos, you're not going to get very far in terms of improving a chronic health condition.
I totally agree. And Melissa and I have our coaches collaboration. It's really hard on the veterinarians nowadays. They don't have a lot of time. Their appointments are back to back and they don't have a lot of time to do a lot of history, or sometimes they're just quick diagnosing and then find out that there's something else coming up with it. And so what the goal would be is to treat those in between times when you're not able to get into the vet, but to know what the diagnosis is to help so that you don't have to go in as frequently, and make sure, especially with a lot of the skin things that are going on nowadays, we want to make sure that we're able to help support all the pet parents out there with making sure that they're able to keep their pets healthy. And in the in between time, we have to make sure that there's things that they can do at home so that they're not visiting as much and they don't need that monthly shot or whatever
Yeah,
else
yeah.
pharmaceutical
And the
they
bottle of pills, yeah,
exactly.
and that's it.
So yeah.
And all of that has its place in a for a dog that's tearing
Right.
itself to shreds. That buys that dog enough time to help some of these other modalities come into play and actually become effective. So,
Exactly.
and I'm glad that you pointed that out, because unfortunately, veterinarians have gone from being in the top 10 in terms of suicide rates and professions to, I think, the top 3,
Yeah.
because the stress level is so astronomically high.
It's gotten
God
worse.
bless
I
them
feel
for,
like
yeah, yeah,
that's what I'm hearing. So a lot of pet parents are telling me that they can't get a regular appointments for 3 weeks, 4 weeks out, and it's never been like that. So you can only
yeah.
imagine the stress that the veterinarians are feeling nowadays. So it
I
explains
can't.
why I wouldn't go back to the hospital right now, but I do feel really awful for what they're having to go through right now, and the stress level has got to be so awful. So this is a way to help alleviate that. I really do think that we can give them a lot of great methods, a lot of alternatives that can help. Just that alone can even help alleviate some of that. So that would be nice.
Right on. And yeah, and that's it. That's the thing that, other than handing you the bag of prescription food, that's the thing that nobody in the conventional vet office really has time to talk about. And that's
Mhm.
part of what the coaches can do. And on the human side, that the human health coaches, much of what they do is actually when they're working with a doctor, is they execute the care plan with the
Mhm.
patient, and they're the point of conversation for that patient, meaning
Right.
that, oh my God, I started this supplement and I had horrible diarrhea. What do I do now? That's what the health coach handles. And
Mhm.
that's really what I envision for the coaching program is that the coaches are able to work with veterinarians to become those the client communicators in this situation so
Right.
that the client understands what the vet said, what that means, what to expect, and here's some other options to support as well.
I think a lot of
And
times pet parents go into the vet office and they just want a quick fix, something for the symptoms and things like that. And so this is a really good time for us to get into depth of how we can heal from the inside out and not completely treat them, but at least help them start to heal themselves and so that they can get to that level of where their bodies are starting to heal themselves and they are able to skip the next one or two vet appointments where they don't need to go in for those extra things. I think that it's a really great program to help with all of our pet parents that are struggling right now because money has been a really big issue. That's all I hear about in one of my jobs is how money they can't afford this, they can't afford that, and they're going to the vets. And we already know that vets are not in it for the money. I hope most people know that now. They are not in it for the money. They can't be. They are underpaid for sure, but it's really, really tasking on them to make sure that they're keeping the animals safe and healthy. But there are some things that we can take off their shoulders. So as health coaches, so that would be amazing to help them with that.
right on. So we're working on those liaisons this year
Yeah.
to help veterinarians understand that nope, we're not here to take your job. Really,
Right.
we're here to help you help your clients better. So right on. Well, this has been super awesome. One thing I do want to mention, we've been working on several bundles to help support your pet with health. And so I'm going to drop a link into our wellness bundle. The goal there is to provide you with the basics for doing the original crock pet diet, keeping everything and keeping all systems go, so to speak.
Yeah.
So check that out. We've got several others up there for stress as well as joint pain, itchy skin, tummy wellness. So I'm trying to pull things together that we've seen work consistently into a kit that you can use easily for your pups. So there's
Nice.
that. Yeah. Make it easy. Kat, this
Right.
has been I'll try to anyway,
Yeah.
a delight, and I am glad that you were able to share your wisdom from the perspective of having been in the profession, also in the current education system, because that's where if we can help people that are just learning and coming into the profession, then we can really start to change it from
Yeah.
within.
I really
So,
do encourage my students to use their own discernment when it comes to things and to not just have everything thrown at them be the end all be all type of thing. So it's only a handful every semester, but at least I can try to get local and they are more receptive, I would say, like I said. So it's been rewarding. And the more semesters that I teach, you can see the more that they're on board with some of these things. So I have to
that
know
is awesome.
yeah, I have to know my limits though, because some things might sound a little cuckoo crazy, but I'm learning slowly when I can like start pushing a little bit more and say things
That's
that
awesome.
are, yeah, but they're
Totally
getting there.
awesome.
They're totally aware now of the things that are going on in the pet food industry, which is wonderful because I want it to change. I'm sure you want it to change, but obviously we want our pets to be as healthy as possible. For
Right
now,
on.
I would love to keep them on homemade diets forever. So that would be great.
Yeah, and that's it. And you're in a great position to do it, especially if you can grow some of your food. It makes it easier in the summer.
Yeah,
Cool.
perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We will be back next week with another fun episode. And until then, hug everybody, kiss everybody on the head, and keep them warm. Cheers.
Bye, guys. Thank you.